Ed Jobs Careers and Coffee Conversation. I'm your host, Andy Hebel, the Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders of Hire Ed Jobs. I'm delighted and excited to welcome you to today's session. Today's session called Unlocking Career Growth Through Association Involvement. We'll be looking at really how participation in professional associations can be a catalyst for both personal and professional growth in higher education. And all I can say from my perspective is you look at this and beyond membership and conference attendance, which lots of folks do, stepping into leadership roles, such as serving on boards and committees, can help strengthen leadership skills, expand professional networks, and create opportunities for meaningful impact. And in the cases of a couple of our participants today, I can tell you that they've led to careers in associations by doing this. So before I introduce our guests, and dive into conversation, I wanted to go through just a few announcements from a housekeeping perspective. If you're interested in supplying a question for a guest, please type in your Q&A option to use our Q&A option at the bottom to type in your question. My colleague and one of our editorial gurus, Leah Jackson, will moderate the last 10 to 15 minutes for audience questions, and hopefully we'll have one of your questions there. When the session concludes, this is Careers and Coffee, our team will conduct a random drawing in which we will send one lucky winner a gift card for coffee on Hire Ed Jobs. What could be better than watching a webinar and getting free coffee? I don't know. Another small housekeeping part is the chat box. If you don't have a question for a guest, but have a comment for the group or want to connect with a peer, exchange information, say hi to somebody you know, please use the chat option. There's both on everyone that goes to the group, and then if you look at specific names, you'll see names to contact other attendees. One friendly reminder, this session is being recorded. So if you're going to participate, just know that this is going to be forever on the internet because the internet does not have a delete button, the last I could tell. We're going to now move to the introductions. Now, I think if you're in academia, you understand that there's a lot of different acronyms in academia. So we're going to be throwing a good number out there with the individuals today. So just for those of you who are keeping score, I want to make sure these are correct. The first one is Coupa HR, Coupa-HR, College and University Professional Association for Human Resources. CASE that you'll be hearing referred to is the Council for Advancement and Support of Education. And finally, CIC is the Council of Independent Colleges. I'd like to now introduce our guests who represent each one of those associations. I'd first like to introduce Kathleen Hermaninsky, who's the president-elect of Coupa-HR, Illinois chapter. Kathleen, thank you for joining us today.
So happy to see you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you. I'd next like to introduce Rob Henry, the vice president of People, Culture, and Talent at CASE. Rob, great to see you today, too.
Great to see you as well, Andy. Thank you for inviting me.
And finally, I'd like to introduce Matt Trainum, Vice President of Networks and Strategic Partnerships at CIC, who came prepared with coffee today, I'm told.
Coffee. Technically, it's tea, but it's in a coffee mug, and so I'm going to count that. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody.
Appreciate the transparency and full disclosure there, Matt. I'm just so excited knowing these three individuals, their collective experience and their thoughtfulness around this subject. I think you're going to find just being exceptional in answering some of the questions we have prepared for them. But once again, before I forget, please send along some questions to us. We do want to save 10 to 15 minutes at the end to do that. And it's only as good as the questions you send us. So please send those along. I'm going to, and this is a question for all the panelists, and we have a lot of questions, so as concise as you can keep your answers, I'm going to ask you to try to keep them as concise as possible, because I do not want to start putting people on time limits. So paying dues to an association is easy, but active involvement takes intention. In your experience, what's the difference between being a member and really showing up as part of an association? I'm going to ask Matt to start with that one, please.
Thanks, Andy. Good again to be here. A couple different quick responses. First, it's good to be a member. So it's good to be a member and just show up and be a member and attend conferences and go to sessions and start to understand what the association is doing, what its purpose is, how it aligns with what you like. So before I jump into becoming kind of more active, it's good also just to enter safely and reasonably and enjoy that experience. And then my next thought for you is, if you look at the conference, most all of our associations have some in-person event, and most folks have the chance to go to, let's say, one single in-person event a year. So if you consider that conference a magic spot, an opportunity to go and set your goals, then the question is, what are the goals? So Andy, how do you become active? You set goals more than just attending sessions. You set goals to, I want to find 3 or 4 peers at this event that are experiencing the same thing I am. I'm going to set a goal to go out of my comfort zone and perhaps go to one of the social events. I'm going to set a goal to go down to breakfast and sit at a table with some people that I just don't know. Y'all, the people at these events, they are life-giving friends that you have yet to meet. And so my answer to you, my immediate answer is go to an event, start to find your space, and then just go meet people and use that conference as the magic spot that it is.
Thanks, Matt. I think the idea of first being a member is a really important reminder, and particularly with tighter budgets, just sometimes membership is all the budget allows for. Don't hesitate, pull the trigger, be a member. You'll get a lot out of membership. And boy, I really love the idea of setting goals and possibly a goal in there that puts you out of your comfort zone. That's just a lovely idea. Kathleen, I'm going to ask, seeing what your perspective is on this question.
Well, first, I think I always like to say you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable when getting involved, because you're talking about a new landscape of people and professionals you probably don't have any kind of social or working background with. So my would be to actively participate is to maybe step into a leadership role if you've been a part of association for a little bit. So maybe it's just you're leading recruitment or you're leading conference planning or something where, remember, leadership's not permanent. You can step back after a year or 2 or 3 if it's not your gig. But if you step up into like some kind of more volunteering, be a little bit more visible within it, I think you'll be able to see the return, your ROI, I guess you would say, your return on investment, just by being able to step up, networking within your own association and just professionally developing yourself as well.
I love the idea of that leadership position, and I'm gonna actually take it a step further because all 3 of your associations have regional gatherings or regional parts of the association that you can get into leadership roles with. And I think that's one of the things that's often overlooked. The big headliner, the artist that packs a football stadium is the national organization and the national conference. But looking at everything else you can do, there's lots of ways to engage. And often the regional parts of associations are a great way for emerging professionals to start looking and learning and growing before, or maybe not, it leads to national service.
Exactly. I'm very active in my state chapter. And if one day it leads to some kind of national leadership, I'm excited about that pipeline. But to be able to direct the influence and culture at just a chapter level, more local level, has been really beneficial.
Thanks, Kathleen. And Rob, we're going to close with you on this question, knowing locally here I'm associated with Case 5 in Chicago. Just making sure I pass that test with you, Rob. Please share your thoughts.
Of course, and I really echo everything that Matt and Kathleen have said about this. What I'm concerned about, and you touched on this earlier, Andy, is the challenges that associations are starting to see in terms of their budgets. So one of the things I'm afraid of is paying your dues in the future might not be as easy as it was in the past. And so again, how do we do this? You know, I see paying dues as very transactional. But again, how do you show your commitment? How do you show up? How do you move from a passive role to the association? One of the things I think is so critical in the work that we're doing with associations is how do we create accessibility? And so how do I show up? Can I become a volunteer? How do I raise my hand? And often I raise my hand and respectfully, if we're honest, I'm never selected. And so one of the tips I would say is how do we figure out how to become an expert in a space? How do you figure out what's a challenge that we're having currently in our profession? And then to me, that's the best way to get your foot in the door, right? Is thinking through what are the challenges that we're having and how can I then start to meet that need?
Eh, Unfortunately, there's a lot of needs to be met out there. So I think the idea of figuring out what those are, where you feel comfortable that you can contribute is a great way to kind of take that first step in that direction. I think we're going to move on to the next question. I'm going to start with you, Kathleen, on this next one. Many of our listeners want to grow as leaders. Actually, and I think oftentimes that's kind of thought of as emerging professionals wanting to grow as leaders or et cetera. I think actually people who have been in positions or people who might be seen as senior also want to grow as leaders. No leader is perfectly perfected. We can all grow at any stage of our career and be better leaders. But what's something specific to your experience in a board or committee that you don't think you could have learned by just staying within your current role, but by being a participant in an association?
I think I'm going to have an answer that may surprise you, but Robert's Rules of Order, that was something I developed as part of like our association and different committees. And when I made it into leadership, where there's board minutes and motions and like you have to call for the votes and different things, that it was so nice to have that experience before stepping into that leadership role, so I wasn't completely blindsided by it. I'll also share event planning because we're always planning our conference. And then to really get me outside of my comfort zone, sponsorship asks, which Andy, we should talk after this call about our conference we're having in April. That is a shameless plug there for the Coupa HR Illinois conference.
You, Kathleen, please.
So I would say those are the three kind of out of the box things that the different committees and association volunteer work has prepared me for my job that I would have had no exposure to within my institution.
Thank you, Kathleen. Robert's Rules of Order are not intuitive at all. And boy, there's always somebody in the crowd who knows them backwards and forwards. So follow them.
And they're not afraid to share it, are they?
No, not at all. Rob, I'm going to move to you next with this question.
Sure. I think we often say to people, lead from your chair, lead from whatever role you're currently in. And I think still that is hard to do. And what I love about getting the association experience or the volunteer experience is that we don't care what role you have. We don't care what your title is. We're going to engage you. And it's a wonderful opportunity for individuals to step up. And that to me I think is something I could not have gotten. I will share with you, I'm currently on the board for Eastern Michigan University for the foundation is where I did my grad work. And I have learned this whole idea of you have to be really uncomfortable with what you don't know. But then you have to become a quick study, right? Someone's going to say, we want to put you on the finance committee. You're like, wow, I don't know if I think that's my strength, but then I've got to do the research. And I don't know if I was just staying with my organization, if I would make that additional effort to do that work.
Rob, I think the idea of leading from whatever role you're currently in is such great advice that I think everybody can just tuck away and at the right moment understand where that's coming from. Finally, Matt, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I not to be the one that says, as we echo everybody, I loved Kathleen's real specifics. There's really good specific skills you can have. And when you said that, Kathleen, you reminded me of all of the really specific skills of being on a committee, of managing a national event, of all of those things. And I love that. And Rob, the kind of connection to that of you can really expand your horizons, of doing that. Those are fantastic lessons that you don't realize until you're there. And so I'll kind of continue that trend and say a couple of sort of high level things. I have really valued learning that people have very similar problems that show in unique ways. And when you're at the national level, you get to see that. You get to see that the world is not as different from campus to campus, but the nuance is different. That's super powerful. It's super powerful to understand your own campus. It's super powerful to understand your ability to go other places. It's super powerful to be valuable in your field. In a related way, you learn that the grass might not be greener on another campus, but you learn that there's grass in other places and that you might be able to bloom somewhere else and that there's other opportunities. And whether you love your spot or whether your spot is not where you want to be, being in associations just gives you exposure to there's other places that I might grow. And maybe my last comment will be kind of as I crescendo across those, there are just wonderful people everywhere. I mean, just sitting in these events, these are great people that volunteer to do this stuff. Vastly, these are great people. And if there was one thing I wish I had done differently in my early involvement, I wish I had kept up with them more. I went to one or two of these, like a conference, a national association does a special gathering and they bring 20 people together and, you're 27 or something. And I didn't keep track with those people. And maybe I was even 35 and on this really neat committee doing some work. And I didn't keep track with it. It's only as I got a little older that I started saying, wow, I need to keep track of these people. I need to connect with them on LinkedIn. I need to send them an email after and say, hey, this was fun. I need to say, hey, if you're coming to DC, let's have some coffee. And I need to do some work to keep that connection up. I didn't get that first. I never would have understood that without greater involvement. So those were a couple of things, Andy.
Thanks, Matt. As somebody who literally met you at a conference, I'm really glad you kept up with me.
Yes.
Now we're going to pivot, and I just want to make sure if one of my colleagues wants to offer up. I saw some notes going around backstage about some technical questions that people were having regarding toggling between folks. I think you can toggle and see all of us, but I sense, and can I get clarification from backstage, that you might not be able to see each other. So I may have offered some misinformation regarding direct messaging others. Somebody from backstage able to drop us a message letting us know if they can see each other and just put something in the chat. So please, I'm just going to say, refer to the chat. I'm not hearing back from backstage, but I'm going to keep moving on that. Sorry for folks who are having a hard time or if I misspoke. The next question, and I'm going to start with you with this, Rob, is really about time allocation. Like, everybody talks about the financial investment and they talk about the returns, and we're trying to measure your return on your investment here. That I can really, really see that it's a challenge time-wise. Not only are the budget issues creating issues about being able to expend funds to participate in associations, but they're also creating staffs are further challenged with their own professional time. So if you do carve out the time for this and you are getting involved, what do you think is the best way to measure the return on your time and energy you've invested in the association work? What should you be looking for as far as reasonable goals, as far as the time that you extend into this?
Yeah, so first I would say, please make time. You have to make time, because to me, this is part of your professional development. And what I often see people doing is not doing that. And then they might be in an odd situation. They might be in a situation where they've lost their job. But what has happened is they haven't made those connections over the last few years. So please, again, make time. When I talked about, and Kathleen, you touched on this about the ROI. When I think about ROI, it's the return on investment, and that's important. but for me, it's also the return on impact, right? So what's the return on the impact that I'm going to get? And what's the return on impact that I'm going to give to others and or to the profession? And so I always encourage to not only look at the money you've spent, but also in terms of what that's going to do for you long term, in terms of your career opportunities. I think it's giving confidence. One of the things we do here at CASE every Tuesday, we have a stand-up meeting. And so we go around the room and people will say, here's what's going on and here's my activities. And today we had a really interesting question, and that was, what is the value of doing this? And someone made the comment that I thought was so powerful was, you know what, I don't think I'm really good at public speaking. But by doing this, this has forced me to speak up. It has forced me to give myself a different voice. And so that to me is that return on impact on the work that we do. And that's why I think you must make time for it, because if you don't, it can actually come back and hurt you in the long run.
Thank you, Rob. I think I want to make sure I provide a little bit of a disclaimer on the question. I don't think there's any intention here. I think we at Higher Ed Jobs think that association membership is one of the most important things, if not the single most important thing you can invest in your career, where you're going to see a return on investment and a return on impact in your career if you do it. You get out of it what you put into it. And we've seen it time and time and time again. And that's, if you've noticed in the wording of some of these questions, it's both on the personal and the professional side. And if you just listen to the first 22 minutes of this Careers in Coffee, you can see that being echoed by our panelists. So just want to make sure we're clarifying that the question is more, I think that particularly it's a little bit of a question we're trying to inoculate you on, because I think when you're looking for the budget to do things like this, these are sorts of questions that leadership does want to know and know well. Matt, I'm gonna ask you to take the next stab at this question.
Yeah, I'll say similar things to Rob with maybe different words. Am I learning and am I contributing? Those are two really great metrics. But for the last thing I'll share on this, the last answer, I'll give a quick story. Young Matt, which maybe Andy, you might remember, was running a residence hall association, student government association, a nice big campus. And I had a student who was one of the officers in this group, and we were halfway through the year. And this student, her name was Sarah, she comes into my office and she says, "Hey, I just want to let you know I'm resigning." And I'm like, "What happened? You know, what's going on?" And she said, I've just realized I'm not enjoying it. And she's like, "Nobody's hurt me. Nobody's done anything wrong. I'm just not enjoying it. And I could do something else with these couple hours that I'll enjoy more." And that has been a few decades. And it left me with, am I enjoying it? Right? Am I enjoying it? So in addition to am I learning and am I contributing, I'd like to your answer of how do you measure it? You can measure it a little bit with your joy. Is it giving you energy? Is it filling your cup? Is it fun to do? It doesn't always have to be those things. And sometimes you might pick something that's not, because you're learning and because the contribution is high enough that it's not doing the other. But I think there's an aspect here of joy that I would throw into the mix as well.
So we need to adjust with the ROJ as well and to the ROI. So
I like it. Return on joy. Let's patent that.
Yeah, I think we have a minimum 12 acronyms we need to hit during the Careers in Coffee. So thanks for helping on that one, Matt. Kathleen, I'll ask you to finish us up here.
Yeah, so I approach this question a little bit differently because in Coupa HR, I know you referenced it, it's human resources. So it's specific to policies and performance, recruitment with everything. So for me, my time is very valuable. I'm involved in a number of different associations and work that's very personal to me. So one question I ask is, am I gaining experiences that not only help me and professionally develop me, but is it helping my institution? And will this association involvement connect me to other individuals that can help me network when recruiting for positions? So to me, that time and investment is actually going to be a return on time in the future. I know Matt said it of like filling your cup. Yes, is my cup full? I think burnout, a lot of institutions, not even just in higher education, we're being asked to do more with smaller budgets. And so with that comes burnout. For me, Coupa HR fills my cup. I go to conferences, I go to a webinar, I get on a call with the state board, and I am filled with so much positive energy that excites me to either get back to work right after that webinar, to come back from the national conference with fun and innovative ideas. And I'll even share a story that might embarrass me a little bit here. Am I getting exposure? Again, this is more HR specific, but am I getting exposure to policies and best practices I've missed in today's over communicative landscape? We probably get hundreds, if not 1,000 emails a week. And so I did miss a small Illinois labor law update that was effective, I think, March 1st this year. We had our conference in April, and luckily, even as a conference organizer, I would still get to participate and listen to the conference and realize that there was a small change that it was not on my radar. Luckily, our institution was fully in compliance, but that little bit of being connected, that time in there, I had missed some kind of labor law update, but I was able to be exposed to it just by making sure I'm taking the time, as Rob said, to make the time to be there, get involved, attend the meetings, because it's going to be very beneficial.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's a wonderful, wonderful way of demonstrating like the real value to the institution that you serve, not just what you're getting for you. Because I think in almost every great instance, it's both sides that benefit from it. It's interesting. I think that kind of combining the two together, the first person that John Eikenberry and I talked to when starting higher ed jobs that had an association relationship was a gentleman by the name of Ray Fortunato, who used to be the chief human resources officer at Penn State as a former, and at the time was a former national president of what was known then only as Coupa. The HR had not been added at that point. And for the price of taking him out to lunch in downtown State College at Chili's, John and I would have these wonderful lessons about the value of association membership and the amazing things that Coupa was able to do back in the day. And you could just see and hear he'd been retired for a good number of years. I want to say he was in his mid-70s, and his memories of those experiences brought him joy. And that, if you want to look backwards and say, I want to look at that way in my 70s and that experience, all I have to think of, I think of Ray, and may he rest in peace, but we're all very grateful we had that time with him and to learn from him. So when you look back, what's the moment from your association involvement that felt like a turning point in your career? Matt, I'm going to ask to start with you again on this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sitting here thinking we should probably like give shout outs to random associations we've been in, just for might be fun to hear what they have. But I had started with CHO, which is a housing association in the South. There's an S and an H in there, and I did a couple of those sort of Southern groups, and those were fun. And I just volunteered, and I don't even really remember exactly what I did, but I showed up a couple times. The turning point for me was when I volunteered to be on a subcommittee with NASPA. So I was on a subcommittee with NASPA for the placement exchange, for those who know that recruitment event / now sort of conference or online existence thing. And what happened is I was on the subcommittee 1 year, and then the next year I was chair of the committee, which meant I went to the main NASPA committee conference meeting, which was a group of like, I just felt like I had snuck in the door to this group of brilliant people, and they didn't notice somehow that they had accidentally let me in. And there is a little sort of background there where my committee was formed in a different way. The committee I was on, it's got a different structure. So I wasn't actually appointed in the ways the others were. I literally had sort of snuck into the room because of this little caveat of how this subcommittee existed. And I was just with these brilliant people. And I look back at that, and I can see, for those who know NASPA, the last 3 executive directors, I developed really great relationships with all of them from that moment, right? I started with that moment with the original for me, that original director, to the director that just left, to the current director, president, and met them all through that. It was glorious. So I had done a few things, they had mattered and they had been great, but then I got into this one that just opened the door to brilliant people, and I'm thankful for NASPA for that. Some of us are in full-time association jobs, and some of us are in volunteer association jobs. That connection with NASPA and all of that volunteering work certainly opened the door for me to come into an association in a full-time capacity, because I understood what it was like behind the curtain. I understood what it meant to actually try to run an association a little bit, so that I was prepared for actually coming to work for one.
Kathleen, I'm hoping you have a response at this point.
Andy, I'm sure you're going to love my response. So, Coupa HR, I had been a member with my institution for, I think, 3 or 4 years, and I had seen a scholarship opportunity for what was then known as Wildfire. It's now known as Ignite, because Coupa HR still goes through with the proud sponsorship of higher ed jobs with this. And so when I applied for it in the 4th year of being in the association and was denied, one of the program leaders had reached out and said, like, hey, I really liked your materials and stuff. Please consider applying again, the following year. Applied for it and was selected that time. And so I had a wonderful cohort of 12 higher education leaders from across the country that I think there's 5 or 6 of us that we have Snapchat streaks, I can't talk, that we've stayed really connected with. But this year-long scholarship program was, they paid for me to attend the association leadership program, where all of the state chapters and national and regional board members gathered, I think that year in Arizona, when it was only 120 degrees outside. But being able to network across the other industry HR leaders, going to the conference, we had monthly calls with industry leaders on varying topics. I got a mentor. So Amanda Bailey from Boston University, became one of my mentors, and I had a peer mentor. So just the networking opportunities I made through that year. I learned so much about higher education outside of HR, because they want to make sure you understand the financials, the diversity space, the student life space when it comes to your role in HR. But I say it's the most pivotal role because I recently, within the last year, have moved to Illinois Wesleyan University as the Associate Vice President for Human Resources. And I think it's part because of the connections I made through Coupa HR, through the Wildfire and Ignite program, in order to get a referral into the position. So I had somebody that I was able to network reach out and say, you should really look at this candidate. She seems pretty fantastic. Their words, not mine. And honestly, I do think it was a big part of not only landing an interview, but also landing the position. So I, at this point, do attribute a significant part of my current career and position to Coupa HR and the wonderful program sponsored by Higher Ed Jobs.
Thank you, Kathleen. I think I will have a follow-up from the other side a little bit later on about the Ignite program for you. But I think one of the nuggets I just want to pick out of there, that was 4 times you had done it. And then this is the 5th attempt, correct? That you were successful on.
I was a part of the association for 5 years and had applied for it previously and did not get it, but was encouraged and then got it.
And I think that remembering about participation, that or any endeavor that's worth really pursuing, oftentimes failure is an important part of success, and sticking to it. And Matt had referred to it early, kind of sneaking in that side door, or just kind of keep going at it. Keep trying. That persistence is a polite persistence, not pushiness, is a really good trait to have in trying to get involved. And sometimes it's years where lots of folks apply and it's very, very competitive. And other years it's sometimes harder to put together a group of folks, and you might have a better chance. It's not always the same thing every year. So, I'm going to move along to Rob and just have Rob finish up this question.
Sure, and just a few words to say. I will share that I've been with CASE now. January will be 20 years. And so my story is going back a bit. In 2009, I was asked to be part of the ASAE Diversity Committee. Had a wonderful experience there for 2 years. And then the following year, I was asked to chair. But I will share with you, I was having probably the most challenging staffing situation that I had ever had in my experience. And my priority, I felt obviously, was to the job, to the person I was supervising, because you always want people to be successful. And so I turned down that opportunity. And so you probably hear, even when I was talking earlier about why I think it's so important to make the time. And so that part wasn't the turning point. But when I go back and I go, boy, that was an opportunity I missed. In 2021, I was asked to come back and be part of a committee. And it was, I will share with you, it was the most wonderful experience that I've had as a volunteer. And so the shift for me is understanding what I missed in 2009, or at that time would have been 2011. And so that's why I'm so adamant about taking that time to do it. Even if your workload is insanity, and I know we have these at times, still making sure you carve out the time to do that for yourself.
That's great advice, Rob. Thank you for sharing. In the interest of time, I think we're going to close with we have some individual questions for each one of you regarding programs with your associations, but I'm going to kind of try to do a little bit of a lightning round here at the end. And it's a question that basically, what is the single most practical action you encourage folks to do in the next 30 days that will help them move forward with an association and take the next step? And I'm going to drag out the rest of this question to give you a few seconds to think about it. Try to limit it to like a minute or less here in the interest of time, but also just first thought, real quick reactions. And I did a random choice of which direction to do this with, and I'm going to start with Kathleen.
So the very short answer is raise your hand. Volunteer, be uncomfortable getting be comfortable getting uncomfortable and asking to get involved. So raise your hand, do something small but visible. Get your name out there, get a little bit more name recognition. I don't remember if it was Matt or Andy that mentioned sitting at a table with a stranger at a conference. It's the same thing. Just sit with somebody new at when you attend your conference meeting or you're attending a virtual board meeting, try to break out and just start somewhere small and raise your hand, answer a call to volunteer.
Thanks. Rob.
I'm going to tell you in my minute and a half, reach out to association leaders within that organization. What I would do is attend, and I feel like I shouldn't be saying this, but attend one of their sessions, attend something that they're doing, reach out to them afterwards and say, boy, I love this session that you did, love to get more involved. And here's where I think I can help the profession. I still think that little third piece is important. So reach out to association leaders, and then hopefully one of them will take the bait.
And if you're not going to a conference in the next 30 days, there's so many online options, and going to an online session and LinkedIn's a wonderful tool for connecting with people. And typically I'd say people who are active in associations are usually pretty active on LinkedIn. They're not people who are disconnected from the networking world. Matt, I'm going to ask you to finish us up on this question.
More of the same. Go to the website of the association you like the most, look at their subcommittees, find a contact for the subcommittee, email the subcommittee. That life-changing moderate experience that I talked about a minute ago, I had just pulled up a committee list and saw a chair, and I emailed and said, hey, do you need help? And they're like, well, we already formed the committee. And I literally emailed back and said, well, I can still help. And like, okay, sure. And so they just added me in. And the next year I was the chair, right? So go in that direction too. I like the talk to the president. I like the raising the hand. go look on the website, find the people doing the work that probably need some help, volunteer to be on a committee. You can do that without having to travel to a conference.
And what's so awesome about that piece of advice is, and now if you're listening to us and you're like shrugging your shoulders, oh my God, another committee. In the best associations that I know, the committees are where the actual work is done. You're going to see people really rolling up their sleeves, doing service to the industry and the association, and really making a difference, which I think is a wonderful transition. And I'm going to start on some of the
Andy?
individual. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Can I just add one thing? I want to make sure we don't lose that spirit that Kathleen had, where she attempted to do this 5 times. You might reach out to people, you might send emails, and you might get the no, but I'm going to encourage you to continue to do it and not to give up.
Thank you. That exclamation point on that, Rob, is very, very important. I'm sure all 4 of us would shake our heads and agree that it is what it's all about. So transitioning to the association specific questions, I'm going to start with you, Kathleen. You mentioned it earlier. You talked about Wildfire and Ignite, and I'm really grateful to my colleagues, John Eikenberry and Kevin Varner, for really getting us shoulders deep into the program, because it's the place where associations serve their members, but also serve their professions by engaging their members. And I really feel like Coupa HR has something special that other associations can learn from and also find ways of engaging emerging professionals. We're going to talk also about another program that's different with GACE that I feel does the exact same thing. But can you talk about the Ignite program and the benefits that you see for the individuals and the institutions, but also for Coupa HR and how they've engaged their membership?
I think being in higher education, 2 words we all hear is recruit and retain. And so I think for programs like the Wildfire Ignite program that Coupa HR sponsors or has with the higher ed job sponsorship, I'm going to keep plugging that in there. Thank you, Andy. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought on okay, so recruit and retain, you're recruiting your HR professionals by putting out the scholarship opportunity. And during my cohort, there were 12 individuals that out of the 12, 10 are still currently retained as higher education HR professionals. And so by offering this, I am Coupa HR's biggest cheerleader. They gave me and invested in me, I don't know how much money for that year. I will be fall on the sword for anything when it comes to Coupa HR related, because they have built in such a retention with me. So when you offer immediate feedback that you're financially investing in a small elite group of people, you're going to end up retaining a majority of those people that are creating your pipeline to future association leadership. So you start small, develop them, you're paying for their professional development that helps their institution, but also, again, is creating the pipeline to your own leadership.
Thank you. Rob, in a similar fashion, the graduate trainee and intern programs that CASE has developed under your leadership and Sue, President and CEO Sue Cunningham's leadership are really just absolutely impressive in how it engages younger professionals and early stage career advancement professionals, but also I kind of feel it's like a love letter to the profession, that trying to find the pipeline of new younger professionals and doing similar work to the Ignite program. Can you talk about in the strategic thinking of CASE, where you see that the engagement of the members is helping CASE and serving its overall mission?
Yeah, CASE is an association with 3,000 institutional members, we're in 82 countries and over 97,000 members. But what we know is that there's a huge pipeline that we have to fill in this industry. And most of us did not grow up even understand what the word philanthropic or philanthropy or giving means. And so one of the things we've really been committed to is how do we help individuals learn about the profession and also understand the importance of giving back. I think this work is even more critical for kids who look like me, in terms of how do we create those opportunities. And I think that's what CASE is really focused with the 100 interns that we have had over the last few years in terms of building that pipeline. You know, our work, and I continue to say this, is not about sales. I'm from Tennessee, and my mom would tell you that I'm just out begging people for money. It's just not what we do, right? It is, we are building relationships and finding out what's important to you as a potential donor, and then aligning that work in terms of the priorities of the institution. And so that to me is what makes this a very strong marriage in terms of we're really giving back and giving back to education.
Thanks, Rob. And probably should say my first real association engagement was with what's currently known as CGP. Back in the day, it was known as NCPG. And I can tell you, as somebody who grew up in the advancement world, that I've always thought, like, same, everybody thinks we're asking people for money, and that's just basically asking people to write checks. I always like to say we're reminding people of what's already good within them, that they know the difference that it's going to make, and it has meaning and something deeper in what they do. And we're trying to help offer them an opportunity to express that. That does involve philanthropy, but that helps them make the difference that I think lots of people get from it. Matt, I really, I've been at ASU GSV with you while you're taking what seems to be like the largest group of people I've ever seen assembled at ASU GSV through a program altogether, where CIC has decided over the past few years to bring independent college presidents to ASU GSV. And if you're not familiar with ASU GSV, another acronym, that's Arizona State University. Oh my gosh, GSV is a financial partner to ASU. I forgot what the acronym stands for, but it's really the biggest. Matt, do you remember by chance?
Global Silicon Valley or Global Silicon Ventures, one of the two of those. I just talked to them today. I hope they're not listening.
Thank you. My apologies. But you're taking folks through this conference, which is absolutely a catalyst to innovation in education, ed tech, thinking about education in a different way, pre-K all the way through. Can you talk about how CIC came up with the concept of doing this, and two, how by engaging these presidents, CIC feels it's making an impact on the association's mission?
Yeah, sure. How do we come up with it? I think the answer I'd give to that, the simple answer would be, the more you pay attention to the sector, the more you'll know where the important conversations are happening. And ASU GSV was an increasingly important conversation, and we were not present in it. So as Andy described it, you have a bunch of ed tech entrepreneurs coming together with funding partners, talking about how they're going to change education. And the ASU GSV people, as well as our side over here, realized that they were having that conversation without the education practitioners present in the space. K through 12 was okay in the space, but not enough higher ed folks. And it just made the conversation incomplete. And so what we're doing by being there is we're completing a conversation. We're making sure that all the parties that are engaged and involved in a topic are present. There's a great quote that applies in a lot of spaces. If it's about us, it's with us, kind of thing, right? If the conversation is talking about us, we should be in it. And this is that kind of moment where our leaders were saying we need to be there to be a part of it. I'll pivot a little bit in the answer and just say there is something also about acknowledging how you continue to grow. And I think I really want people to be super established in one association. I think that's completely the best advice. I don't think you should sample around. Everybody sample around, but find one and keep it. But outside of that, finding a place that kind of blows your mind and is different than you expect is just super important. And that event is just different than any higher ed event. And it doesn't have to be a paid thing. It might be volunteer work down the street. It might be something else, but finding a place that has a community, so there needs to be people there, that is outside of the normal place that you talk. Finding that one other spot is super valuable. So Andy, what's the value to our presidents? we give them an experience different than all the other experiences where they can talk and develop.
And from my perspective, the event is better off for having their voices there. Having attended previous to the presidents being there, that practitioner perspective was not one that was being voiced in the way that they can voice it. Well, at this point, we have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to ask my friend and colleague, Leah, to come on and offer up some questions for you all.
Thank you, Andy. We did get several questions, so I'll go ahead and jump right in. First off, we heard from someone whose organization does not currently fund membership fees for associations. What with membership costs rising and high conference fees, of course, what advice, if any, do you have for this situation? I don't know if one of you wants to jump in or if you all want to answer, but
I'd love to jump in if that's okay. First, I'd like to tell the person you're not alone. Many professionals are having to either self-fund their memberships or not have to go without a membership sometimes if there's financial issues that are there. My advice would be to look small and strategic. There may be some free or low-cost local chapter events or webinars, newsletters, open board discussions that you may feel value before you invest into a potential like a new association or reinvest. But I would suggest when you do join that association, like if you start small, take detailed notes about the what did we call it? Return on investment and return on impact and joy, maybe less joy, but taking the notes so that if you change supervisors or leadership or institutions, you have an immediate reason as to why the institution should be paying for the membership because of the ROI.
And the only thing I would add, because Kathleen, I think you're spot on. Check with the association. They might have a program that will help offset part of that membership cost is one thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, all right, so we know we can't afford that, or it doesn't make sense in terms of the ROI, ROIJ to do that right now. I'm a DEI person, so I'm having fun with this. And so, so it might mean let me gather other people from other associations, and we're going to have our own convening, and we're going to network, and we're going to be connected. So you're still getting those resources, but respectfully, you're not paying for them.
I would absolutely echo both of you there and add to Rob's comment that it may or may not be public that the association would help you out, particularly if you're a new member in doing that. And in the idea of starting your own study group, like LinkedIn's a wonderful place to go out there and meet professionals. And on LinkedIn, just about every association has some sort of gathering spot. Go gather there. There's a lot of opportunities to engage that are free of cost. Start engaging there before you spend your money. But it's also difficult in some cases. Some associations are individual membership based, others are institutional. So if your institution doesn't have the membership, you can't even get an individual one. So there are some challenges there. They're just pragmatic and kind of find your own way. All three of you at one point or another during this conversation pointed out ways that you got in a side door or back door, or in some instances parachuted through a skylight through the roof to be able to get into an association. Think about Rob, Kathleen, and Matt and what they did, and try to apply your own stuff.
great, thank you. It looks like Matt also dropped something in the chat, so thank you for that, Matt. Moving on to our next one, we had someone who said, I've been out of academia for nearly a decade. All of my connections have been lost. So where could you suggest that I start? I recently lost my job and I'm trying to get back into the world of academia or higher ed. So how could associations help them? Any advice for where they should start?
I don't want to start again, but I'll jump in the purpose of time. You could reactivate old memberships that maybe you were part of if you've been out of academia for just a year. If you have those memberships, a lot of times there'll be like a guest member that you can go back, like if you've been separated from an association for a year, that you can come in and do like a free event. You mentioned being the person being without a job right now. I would just make sure you go update and refresh your LinkedIn, look at every piece that's on there, and just refresh it, update it, make sure it looks good for future employers.
I'll say from an association standpoint, you're going to have to figure out the membership part, like joining or not joining and the expense of that. But associations, there's often spots for volunteers. There really is. And so that might be a place, though folks might imagine that you can spend 10 hours a day looking for a job. We all know that's not how it works. And so that might be a place to give energy and to find some impact and to find some joy while you're in the job search. And on behalf of all of us, I think we've all been in those moments. I've been in that moment without a job and not exactly sure what's coming next. And those are hard moments. And so heart out to you in that space. And using an association has a place to get some energy and to stay connected.
And the last thing I would add is there an opportunity through the association that you might be able to find a mentor there, or is there a mentoring program? Also, can you find a sponsor? I always say there's a difference in mentoring and sponsoring, but that sponsor who can help guide you and can open some doors for you to have some conversations with as well.
I'd also like to add, both Matt and Kathleen are part of our regular contributors to our podcast. We have a segment we called Ask the Expert, where we take questions like this and answer it. So if you're having questions about networking or LinkedIn and matching your resume or sponsoring and mentoring, all of those, maybe we'll throw some of those resources into when we post this, some links to some of our previous Ask the Expert ones. And hey, if we missed this and we didn't answer your question, we always welcome questions at podcast@higheredjobs.com, or please, Kyla's posting the link to everybody there, or you can also, if you're an X person, send us a direct message on X @higheredcareers, and we're happy to pass those along and answer them. We always take a lot of pleasure and thought into trying to give a full perspective on those.
Thank you, Andy. Do you want me to ask one more, or should
I think we have one more quick one.
Okay, great.
We have 2 minutes.
Okay. I think that you have all touched on this a couple times, and I know a lot of it has to do with raising your hand, volunteering for committees like you talked about, but someone asked, how do I get involved as an association board member or as a journal reviewer in my field? Any thoughts on that?
I think it is about raising your hand and about volunteering and about keeping it up. We've all appreciated Kathleen's first mention of the multiple times and her, to some extent, vulnerability of sharing that, right? You kept going and it worked. And I think it does work. I see it every day. I think it works. I have presidents who do not have jobs anymore for a variety of reasons, who email and say, I'm happy to help with something. And this is a president. We're like, oh, I don't have anything right now. And then 6 months later, hey, I'm around you. So want some help? It's like, oh, we have something here. Yeah, come and help. And that keeps everyone fresh and is a contribution to everyone. So I would say keep up that volunteering.
And I'm just going to echo that in terms of volunteering. You can also volunteer to help, like in terms of policy writing or writing articles, reviewing journals. Like it doesn't have to be necessary, as we've talked about, like conference and other networking. If you are more computer based than classroom based or something, there's other ways and non-traditional ways to get involved.
Thank you, Leah. Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Matt. This was such an enjoyable conversation, and I hope folks who are listening have found it equally enjoyable as well as educational. And thanks, guys. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Having us.
Great to be here.
And thank you for listening. We appreciate your time. And like we know, it's an investment. So thank you for listening. And we look forward to talking again real soon.